Amy Looper, welcome to the Modern Sales Management Show.
Thank you so much, Josh, for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm excited about this conversation. Can you start by walking our audience through kind of how you got to the point where you are today? You spent most of your career inside companies, not in the consulting world, right?
Yeah, well, I did spend some time selling consulting services in the cybersecurity space, which is where I got my feet wet on just, the overall processes that we, see in the consulting world. But this last year took a turn out of the corporate world to provide some flexibility. As you can see, I have some Van Gogh artists behind me. And it was a perfect time to do that. So it's been really fun now to pivot and be the consultant and do the delivery and focus on helping small businesses.
When in your career did you realize that you really enjoyed and had a knack for the understanding sales enablement and messaging and helping sales teams deliver?
Yeah, I would say, I started out as an account manager, right out of school and worked in a SaaS company. But where that really came, the leadership part came into play was when I was with a company called Greenway Health. And, was promoted to sales management and managed a team of about 10 people. And I just fell in love with, always finding better solutions for them, always trying to navigate back end processes to make their jobs easier, because as a salesperson, I knew what they were up against. They had a lot of barriers to overcome. And so if I could, help them, it was just a natural fit.
What were some of the keys that helped you help that team thrive?
Yeah, I think, it's really was kind of a combination. As a sales leader, I think, there's a lot of things you can do from a management level to really navigate internal waters to help salespeople perform their best. And when you're in technology specifically, I think it's really important to kind of be that liaison between, the product, the technical folks. You kind of understand where things are in the development phases when you're on the management level. And then being able to come back and be that translator to the sales team, to make their lives easier, to understand, okay, these are the benefits we're bringing to the market. These are the outcomes we're going to provide to our clients, and kind of, help coach them, whether it be through training or weekly coaching or whatever the mechanism is. You're kind of being able to be that translator so that you give them exactly what they need to be effective in the marketplace.
Now, you have a lot of experience in the startup world and in the cybersecurity world. What are some of the things that, what are some of the unique challenges and opportunities that those two types of organizations have on the sales side?
Yeah, I think it's a complex sales process, right? Normally, when you're selling into an organization, it's not transactional. It's very strategic usually, and there's usually a lot of players from the competitive landscape that are in there already, and so you have to navigate that on the sales end as well as the marketing end too, because you're cutting through a lot of that noise, right? And so being able to understand how to work with different buyers within an organization and treat even some of the organizations that may be categorized more as, your SMB market, or something that people may from the outside think of as more transactional. The buying cycles are usually just as complex, maybe at a lower level based on size, but you still need to go through, really understand, do complete discovery, and really get down to the meat of whatever the customer's problems are and address it from there.
So one of the things that I enjoy talking to you about, there's sales managers out there who stay sales managers, and but you've taken what you've learned and turned it into frameworks and methodologies so you can serve more people in your consulting practice today. Mm-hmm. So let's get into some of that. What do you look at when you're first evaluating sales teams?
Well, when I'm evaluating the actual sales team, the actual employees, not the program, I'm looking for characteristics and how they're interacting with clients first and foremost, right? Are they listening? Are they truly, engaged in that problem solving methodology, right, with the client? And then also just their day-to-day work habits. Are they being consistent? Are they self-driven to just, go do whatever it takes to kind of chop the wood, right, to get through to the other side of the finish line? And are they strategic enough to be able to think outside of the box? Because they will inevitably have to think outside the box when you're selling any kind of technology solution or product or service.
What all right, so let's talk about the program.
Yeah.
What are the characteristics of a top-notch sales program in the startup world or the startup cybersecurity world?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, I think it comes down to really understanding your buyer. So the people that really have this dialed in have their customer right dialed in. They understand who their ideal customer is. They understand the touch points during that buying process and how they're meeting that customer as a vendor. How are they serving them? How are they serving them from the beginning of just greeting that visitor on the website all the way through to interactions from pre-sales to post-sales to delivery, et cetera. They get that, and they always go back and look at that throughout the year to make sure that they're minimizing any kind of gaps. So I think like customer journey mapping and those kind of things are important, even to include into a sales program.
So if somebody
I also,
doesn't, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I'll say if someone doesn't have the program that they want today, what are kind of
Yeah.
the major steps you'd take them through to build a program that it's going to get the company the outcomes that they're looking for?
Yeah, definitely. So initially, you really have to start to, plan to grow, right? You have to really understand what did you do last year, and what are the metrics that kind of got you to where you were. Okay, that's great to know as background. And then where do you want to go revenue wise? How much do you want to increase it? So that way you can set the right activities and the right benchmarks to meet, that, right? And then next it comes to, so you're building really for long-term growth there. Then next it comes down to running for excellence, right? Where you're developing the right sales process that may be appropriate for your organization. And I definitely think there's some great frameworks out there, but I do think that every organization should look at how they're engaging with their buyers and their overall sales process uniquely to their organization.
What does that mean? So look at, you said they should look at how they're engaging uniquely to their organization. To explain that to me.
Yes, sometimes I think, so sometimes like a very basic sales process might be, okay, guys, like, hey team, go do your process, which is go do discovery, ask a lot of questions of your client, understand their needs, and then go in and go for the demo, for an example, right? And then do a quote and negotiate and then go win the deal. And at a very high level, that sounds great, but there might be missing like minute pieces in there and steps that need to be really fine tuned. You may have specific questions in the discovery phase that you really need to get into because of whatever service or product you're taking to the marketplace. And in order to effectively get to the next step, you need to qualify your client in such a way by asking, questions A, B, and C.
It's more deliberate.
Definitely. Yeah. And I always suggest too that people really test early on, their client's commitment, because you don't want to get in the trap of just always promoting and always thinking everybody wants my solution, because it just may not be the right time. They may not have the budget, or they just may be not interested and not willing to tell you that because they want to try to be nice. And so you kind of have to, test the waters a little bit in the early stage to make sure you're focusing on the right ones.
When you're working with organizations, are there certain characteristics that you're looking for effective sales leaders at these high growth startups and cybersecurity companies?
I think for an effective sales leader, it mirrors a little bit to the rep where they need to be self-driven. They need to be able to go get resources when needed, level up on, whatever they need to level up on. Usually in the tech world, it's, a little of the high level technical items, whether it be something new in cloud or something new in cybersecurity, the latest cyber attack, whatever it is. But they need to be able to go do that themselves and run. So I think the ambition is a big part of it. And then also just the self-discipline of being able to go through and follow processes that have been put in place to kind of trust the process to create a consistent sales results.
What are some of the mistakes that you see companies making in terms of setting up their sales program and managing their sales program?
Mm.
What are some of the pitfalls people can avoid?
Yeah, I think in the early stage, we often see if you've got a founder, for an example, that maybe hasn't worn the sales hat or been in those shoes, maybe they've been a developer, an engineer, whatever. Sometimes they can fall into the trap of, if I just hire, the sales will come. And so one of the pitfalls can be either hiring too soon when you don't have your own ideal customer kind of really dialed in and proven that test phase really proven out, or it might be not having the right just infrastructure put in place where you're like, I gotta hire like 2 salespeople this year because we're moving quick, we're growing, and we're in cybersecurity. A lot of stuff is coming in because people are getting breached in the world today. So I've got all this business. What do I do with it? So if you're not properly prepared to intake the business, then that breakdown can happen, not just with anybody you hire, but your own customer delivery can really break down because you weren't ready for the growth and you weren't able to really manage, delivery on the post delivery or post sale very well. So that can affect your customer retention, which is the worst thing ever. So I would say those are a couple of the pitfalls among others. I think just not being really clear on what you want your sales team to drive to. If you think that you just need new revenue and you don't really know if it's going to come from your current customer base, new customers, how are you going to support sales? Do you have someone in marketing? Do you have the ability and the time to sit down and train them properly on how you go to market and the outcomes that you're driving to the marketplace? Then those can be issues later on where your salespeople are not going to perform their best. And then therefore you're wasting your investment.
So let's take that down a level. If I'm a founder of a startup and I'm trying to figure out at what stage should I not hire a salesperson or a couple salesperson, when should I start developing sales managers, sales leaders in the organization? What are the things, benchmarks I should look for? What are the things I want to make sure I should have in place? Can you talk in some specifics? I know every organization is different.
They are different, and that's a great question. I usually, I start to see people when they're getting up to like $2-3 million in reoccurring revenue. Then they're starting to really focus on building it out, right? Up until that point, they probably have handled it themselves. And while it may be a stretch as you get to the 2 million mark, like they've been able to kind of just go along and figure it out. When they're ready to, start to bring in somebody, maybe you've got somebody like in an inside role, and then maybe you've hired someone to really go out and drive some new business relationships in the door. When they're ready to start sharing that leadership responsibility of forecasting revenue, enabling these folks that are in sales and marketing capacity. I think that that's a perfect time to really start thinking about a leadership role. And it may be fractional at first. It may just be kind of like, a few hours a week growing into a full-time role as you grow the business.
So let's talk about forecasting for a minute. I like your approach to forecasting. What are the keys to accurate sales forecasting, and when in a startup's life cycle does forecasting become relevant and trustworthy?
Trustworthy. You had to throw that in there. Yeah, I think forecasting should be done at all levels. I'm a solopreneur right now and I do it for myself, right? Because I want to test the opportunity. I want to go back and make sure that, okay, wait a minute, this is the set of criteria that I have built out in my own forecast. Is this truly where I want to be in this opportunity? Does it make sense for the business, right? So forecasting is important on two things. Obviously, you want to be able to know what you have coming in the door, or at least be confident that have a certain number that you're going to reach, and make your accountants happy. So that's the financial side of it. But the other side of it is, are we bringing in the right customers to grow the company in the way that we want to grow it? And that's where I think it's important, even early on. You can do that through a number of different ways, but I think you and I have talked a little bit about, stages and like a HubSpot, for an example, using tooling to really make sure that you have completion metrics kind of built in, where you say, okay, I've gone through, my level of discovery, whatever that means for that organization. I've, clearly identified these set of requirements with the customer, and they're all in. Okay, great. Now we can move on to the next phase. Now we can move on to, whatever, presentation, demos, further, strategy sessions, whatever that looks like. And then, on the back end too, it's so important, because as you get down into negotiating deals and getting deals into like the 75% range, then you can really start to tee up the other side of your organization. So delivery, sales ops, et cetera, to be able to make that transition from the actual win to, operations much smoother, and just cross-functionally communicate much better, which ultimately you're driving a very smooth customer experience and giving your customers the experience that they want to do business with you long-term, right? And that's the ultimate goal.
Well, that's a great answer. That makes a lot of sense. I want to wrap up our conversation today by asking you, if you're giving a talk in front of 100 sales leaders, VPs of sales, directors of sales, what do you want them to know about 2021? And what would you advise them to start doing more of over the next year?
I think 2021, so I think if I had my crystal ball, I think it's going to be much of the same the first quarter, right? I think like we're going to be doing virtual meetings still. I think we're going to just kind of be doing the same thing. But I think connecting with authenticity and like teaching your salespeople how to do this. So teaching them how to socially sell. It's kind of like in sales, we're not just going out there and, hacking a product anymore. You have to build your brand online, even as a salesperson. So I think it's really important for sales leaders of any size of organization to do that themselves, but then also encourage their folks to do that as well. Be a resource in your community. So it doesn't mean you have to go on LinkedIn every day and have some sort of, social push, although that is a good strategy, as long as it's meaningful content. If you're going on there and just sharing whatever marketing shared and it doesn't connect with you as a person or you and your customer base, then it just looks like spam, right? But if you can say, hey, I know that I'm a strategic, I'm just going to say I'm a strategic account manager or something, and I know that I focus on we'll just call it retail customers. Well, you want to share something that's meaningful to your customer base so that you're reaching your target audience in a way that they're going to find valuable.
I think that's a really good advice and a good note to end on. Amy, where can people find you online if they want to connect with you and learn more about how you might be able to help their organization?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn, but also my website is www.relativitycells.com. And, I'm always online, so feel free to email, or LinkedIn is good too.
Wonderful. Before we wrap up, is there any last sales management advice that you're really passionate about these days that you'd like to share with our audience?
I think it just comes back to as sales, marketing, and like customer success is really merging. It's really coming together. It's no longer like siloed operations. I mean, when you get into a really large organization, of course, they're going to have different teams, but the more collaboration that can happen, I think the better. And I think if we can all just, even though 2020 had a lot of noise in all of our personal lives, professional lives, I think 2021 could start out that way. I think if we can just continue to focus on the customer, then all of that alignment kind of takes place, right? Start with the customer goals, start with the customer in mind, and then design from there.
Amy Looper, I really appreciate you coming on the Modern Sales Management Show today. Thank you for your time. And with that, that does it for another episode of the Modern Sales Management Podcast. Have a great day.